What's going on, guys? I'm Tommy and I'm coming at you with an action figure review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Hasbro The Black Series Gaming Greats ARC Trooper, Infiltrator, and Commando Droid Training from Battlefront 2 2017. If you saw my recent review on another Gaming Greats 2-pack from this game, that being the Phase 1 Coruscant Guard Trooper and the Training Battle Droid Officer, I think it's really awesome that we're getting some unique characters from the Battlefront games, and I'm particularly excited about this ARC Trooper because the TVC line got 3 of the 4 ARC Trooper looks from Battlefront 2 2017 years ago now, and I'm super excited to have now 2 of the 4 with this default look here. I also really like that Hasbro seems to be fleshing out the Training Battle Droid looks from Battlefront 2, and in this case with the Commando Droid, it's not an original design, it's actually one that came from the Clone Wars show. I picked this 2-pack up on a pre-order through Amazon, as this was an Amazon exclusive here in the US for 2026. As far as the packaging goes, this is the standard style of packaging for 2-packs right now for this line. On the front of the box, we have our Black Series logo up at the top. We have a big plastic window showing you both of the figures and their accessories. We have a reflective Gaming Greats sticker here on the window. That's an interesting touch. And then we have over here some vertical text with the character names, and then below the window we have a banner that is in the color of the Gaming Greats subline and the name of the game these guys are from, as well as some logos down at the bottom. On the side of the box we have our mural art here, and on this you can see the Infiltrator ARC Trooper, and you can also see the Commando Droid. Interestingly, it appears that the ARC Trooper has the Phase 2 helmet fin as opposed to the Phase 1.5 hybrid style helmet that he actually has on the figure. The figure is the one that's accurate to the game, the art is not. One thing the figure did not get right though is that the ammo pouch on the figure appears to be on the wrong side, and then on the art here, the ammo pouch is on the correct side of the chest plate there. As far as the Commando Droid, you can see his art down there as well. On the background of this art, you can see kind of the character customization screen background, which I think is a nice little touch. Character names down at the bottom. On the back of the box here, we have some of the stuff we've already seen on the other sides of the packaging, like our mural art images that we saw on the side of the box. These are blown up a bit. You can also see a little bit more of them than you could on the side of the box. We have our Black Series logo, our character names, and then we have a bio in about 1,000 different languages. This bio reads, "Armed with dual blaster pistols and an impressive array of Republic gadgets, the Advanced Recon Commando rushes fearlessly into battle. Inside the secret cloning facilities on Kamino, cadets sparred against training BX droids in battle simulations." At the bottom of the mural art for the Commando Droid, you can also see the logo for the Battlefront 2 video game, and then we have the name of the game with that wraparound banner, and then down at the bottom we have our legalese. Guys, please don't feed these action figures to your babies. On this side of the box here, we have our Gaming Greats logo, our wraparound window, wraparound banner, and the Black Series logo at the bottom. And then on the bottom of the box, we have even more legalese, and on the top, nothing. That about wraps it up for the packaging here. So let's get these guys opened and we'll check them out. Alright guys, here are the figures out of the box. Before we take a look at the figures, let's of course take a look at the accessories they come with. As far as the ARC Trooper goes, he comes with his twin DC-17 blaster pistols. We have seen these blaster pistols time and time again in the Black Series, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. These have a nice sculpt. There's no painted detail or weathering detail on these, but they're really nice. They're done in a dark gray kind of gunmetal looking sculpt, and I have no complaints about this accessory. The dual wield blaster pistols are the base weapon for the ARC Trooper here, and he doesn't carry any other blasters in the game, so I'm completely fine with no additional blasters coming with this figure. As far as the Commando Droid goes, the Commando Droid does come with his standard E5 blaster rifle. This is the standard Battle Droid issue weapon, and this is the weapon that the Commando Droids use in Battlefront 2. We've seen this accessory time and time again in the Black Series as well. It's got some great sculpted detail, no painted detail or weathering on this one either. And then of course our Commando Droid does also come with his Vibro Blade. I really don't know if I'm a fan of this very bright purple pearlescent color for the sculpt, but you can see there's just a little bit of a paint hit here on the edge of the blade to give it a little bit of color differentiation. That is something that I like, and it's definitely more defined on this release, in my opinion, than previous Commando Droid releases. It does have a little peg sculpted in here, so you can plug it into his back, and this is an accessory that we also see the Commando Droid use in the game. It does sit on the Commando Droid's back in-game, and they use it as their melee attack. Now, as far as the figures themselves, these are, as far as I know, completely reused. There's no new tooling between either of these two figures. We've already seen both of these sculpts debut in the Black Series. We'll set the Commando Droid off to the side and start things off with our ARC Trooper here. So this is the default look for the ARC Troopers. In the game, they call this the Phase 2 look, which is probably why the art on the mural had just the Phase 2 fin on the top of the helmet as opposed to this Phase 1.5. We'll talk about whatever's going up on here a little bit later. But this is the accurate look for the Phase 2 ARC Trooper. This is the default skin that if you don't buy any of the customization options for this ARC Trooper class in the game, this is what your character will look like. This is a completely original design to Battlefront 2 as well. This is not something that we saw pre-existing in any other Star Wars media. Now we'll start things off with the helmet here. This is the same ARC Trooper helmet that we have seen several times in the Black Series now. I think the only other time this ever wasn't a completely removable helmet was with the Umbra Operative ARC Trooper, which came out a few years ago now. We have some red paint apps for the fin on the top of the helmet, as well as the paint apps on the face. I really like the patterning on the front here. It does look really cool. You can see that there is a black brow that's painted that runs all the way to the back of the helmet, as well as that light gray that goes around to the back as well. He's got some blue tick marks on the bottoms of the sides of the helmet. You can see he's got some black and silver for the chin filters, as well as black and silver for the frown, and a nice glossy black for the visor. The helmet does also feature a rangefinder, which does have a swivel, which without, the sculpt getting in the way, this could technically swivel a full 360 degrees, so that you can actually get that feature for him to look down it. He does do that in the game too if you use one of his abilities, and the top of the rangefinder is painted in black. If you look underneath the helmet, you can see that there is a Tamara Morrison head sculpt under there, glued to the helmet, and that doesn't feature any paint apps as far as I know. It's just a base Tamara Morrison head. I think that this helmet definitely needs an update. I think that it just looks a little rough. It's very bobbleheady, especially being a removable helmet, and I'm not sure what's going on. I don't recall ever having an issue with the previous ARC Troopers I've gotten in the line having this weird bump on the back of the fin here. That's interesting to say the least, but yeah, definitely a little bit weird. I feel like it's been warped from being in the packaging, and I feel like if they just went with swappable heads, that could really alleviate a lot of the issues with this sculpt. Now, the butterfly pauldrons, the reinforced chest plate, and the backpack are all one overlay that's all glued to the torso of the figure. You can see on the backpack, it's done in black, and there are some gunmetal colored paint apps just to give it a little bit of detail, and when those hit the light, they add a lot of depth to this sculpt. I'm very happy that they included that. As far as the butterfly pauldron goes, this is correct, having the red on the right side and the gray on the left side. These are done in a thin, pliable plastic, so in theory, these should move themselves out of the way when we're articulating the shoulders. And then, of course, I mentioned it when we were covering the packaging, but this ammo pouch here should be on the right side of the reinforced chest armor as opposed to the left side. This is a separate piece, and I think it probably was just some sort of manufacturing mistake when they were designing this figure. Clearly, it got approved by Lucasfilm like all the figures do, so that's kind of a bummer. As far as the upper arms go, these are the upper arms that they used to use on one of the older, I think it was the 2020 Clone Trooper sculpt, before they updated the Clone Troopers to have the shoulder armor be on an O-ring system. The way they used to do them, they would have the shoulder armor be a thin, pliable piece, and that would be glued to the top of the bicep armor. This is a bummer for me because I think that it definitely hinders the articulation. This system wasn't horrible, definitely wasn't the best. I definitely prefer the O-ring system we have now. But back in the day, you would be able to lift the hinge up on the shoulders, and then it would be, warped. You could make the armor ride up over the carapace. But with this ARC Trooper having the butterfly pauldron, makes it almost impossible to get these layers to lay right. You can get it to work, as you can see, but it's just a very convoluted system, and I think that this ARC Trooper sculpt definitely deserves to have those upper arms updated to the newer version, especially if they're going to do more ARC Troopers in the future. My opinions on how they executed this aside, I think it looks perfectly fine. The armor looks good. It's got these nice red stripes here. I will say they are chipped on the edges. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I think that in general, general, they should just make all the paint apps clean if they're just going to make the trooper clean as well. If you're gonna have a weathered trooper, do weathered paint apps. If you're gonna have a clean trooper, do clean paint apps. The elbow armor, which is glued to the bottom of this piece here that's painted in the black for the undersuit, does have a band here that goes across the elbow hinge. This works as a nice overlay that does not hinder the elbow articulation. ARC troopers have unique gauntlets compared to regular clone troopers, so you can see that right one there just has the basic sculpt work done in a lighter gray to match the reinforced chest armor, and then you can also see the left gauntlet has some nice paint apps. You can see green, red, and white for the 4 buttons here, and then you can see this silver piece is painted on there as well. Overall, great sculpt work here. I have no complaints about that, and you can see that the hand armor is also done in gray. Something about the 2020 Clone Trooper base sculpt that I do also find to be a bit dated is that only the right hand features the trigger finger. The left hand does not feature a trigger finger, and we have a character that only comes with dual wield blaster pistols and only uses them in game. I would much prefer if we updated it to what we have with the 2023 Clone Trooper, where you have both hands with trigger fingers. Everything underneath the overlay on the chest here is just your base sculpt for the Clone Trooper. The old Clone Troopers did have just a solid torso here. They did not have it featured as an overlay. The belt, however, is an overlay, and this is the ARC Trooper belt, so you can see the belt and the ammo pouches are one overlay here. You can see this is a loose overlay that's separated from the comma, which is its own overlay, and you can see that the belt is just done in solid white on the front. On the back, however, some of those added ammo boxes that the ARC Troopers have are painted in like a navy blue, and then those go down to the holsters and some of the extra ammo boxes on the front of the comma as well. You can see the straps that cross in the front too. As for the comma itself, they did a good job of getting accurate printing on either side of the comma here, and while usually I do prefer soft goods for Clone Trooper commas, I will say when it comes to the ARC Troopers and all that, you know, very unique and complex printing they can tend to have on those commas, I think that the thin pliable plastic works just fine, especially because it's cut all the way up to the back of the waist, so in theory it shouldn't really hinder your articulation too much. The one thing I will say they did miss on this is that there should be painted in black the trim on the outsides of the comma. That is something they missed on this figure. As far as the thighs go, that armor is just done in the basic white, and then the knee armor is also just done in gray. Another thing that I'm not a fan of on this older Clone Trooper sculpt that I love about the newest one is that they glue the knee armor to the bottom of the thigh as opposed to just leaving it as a free-floating piece, so when you bend the knee armor is just kind of stuck like that. And then, you know, we'll get into articulation later. I'll talk a little bit more about why I'm not a fan of this style of articulation. And then we have another missing paint application here on the lower legs. So down here on the lower legs, these little indented pieces, because these are like reinforced lower leg armors. This is just the base Clone Trooper lower leg armor underneath of this piece here. That's how they sculpted this. That's how Lucasfilm approves it. And these are supposed to be in the same red color we see everywhere else. Aside from that, another missing piece here would be that the ARC Troopers have unique boots. They have reinforced plating on the tops of the regular Clone Trooper boots, and you can see that instead of sculpting a new boot, what they did was they just painted the tops of the Clone Trooper boots in gray. And while I see what they tried to do there, that is technically not accurate to how the figure looks. Aside from that, the looks of the figure, I will say overall, it's fine, but this is definitely a dated articulation system. I would much prefer a lot of the sculpting from the 2023 Clone Trooper on this, particularly the upper arms, and then also removing the glue on the knees, and then of course giving that left hand the trigger finger as well. As far as articulation goes, this guy's a newer figure. He came out in the last, like, I think 5 years, so because of that, he's got some decent articulation. The neck is on a dumbbell joint, so there's a ball joint in the top of the neck and another one at the head here, another ball joint as well at the base of the neck. You can see some really nice range out of that. You can get our trooper to look down a good amount, and you can get him to look up ever so slightly. You can get a good tilt out of that even with all the overlays here, and you can get some right and some left. As far as the shoulders go, we have a butterfly joint that's built into the shoulders. You can see you can move that forward and back. It's got plenty of range. And then we have our hinge and swivel at the shoulders here. So you kind of have to lift up the shoulder armor so that it'll ride up over the carapace and underneath the butterfly pauldron, and you can get this to about 90 degrees. That's pretty typical for Black Series, a little bit shy of that. and then of course you can get a full 360-degree swivel, and the pauldron does move itself out of the way. We do have a hinge and swivel at the elbows here, so you can see the elbow bend does get a little bit past that 90-degree mark, so that's good. And then we have a swivel at the top of the elbow as well, and then at the wrists, of course, we have a hinge and swivel here. So the right wrist has that swivel with a vertical hinge, and then the left wrist has a swivel with a horizontal hinge. We do have a ball joint about midway through the torso here, and that's going to give you some good added range there. You can see that the overlay for the belt does move itself out of the way for that. And then we have additional ball joints at the hips. You can see that the thin pliable plastic for the comma and the belt boxes do move themselves out of the way, so it doesn't really hinder that range all that much. You can still bring the legs out a decent amount. Something about the Clone Trooper armor is that, you know, you can't really bring the legs forward very much, because in the movies they actually clip into themselves, the CG models do. So they cleverly included a thigh swivel cut, which is hidden underneath the thigh armor, so that you can bring those legs all the way forward, and you can see again those overlays don't really hinder that one bit. At the knees we have a hinge and swivel, and you can see that that hinge gets you to about that 90-degree mark, maybe a little past it, pretty typical for Black Series. And this is where I, you know, take issue with the knee armor being glued to the thigh plate. It just completely exposes the knee, and then the knee armor isn't protecting the knee. They've alleviated this issue. That's, I think, my thing here is they've alleviated a lot of these issues on the 2023 Clone Trooper sculpt. I think a lot of those need ported over to the ARC Trooper sculpt. We do also have a swivel at the knee as well, and then at the ankles we have a Hasbro Classic, the forward-facing pin for rocker, our hinge, which gets you forward and gets you some nice back as well. So overall, we've got some decent articulation. It's not the best. You can definitely tell it's starting to get a little bit dated, and overall, it's a fine figure, but I definitely think there's room for improvement on this guy. Let's set our ARC Trooper off to the side and talk about the Commando Droid next. Now, I love the training droids from the Clone Wars, and I've been really excited to see that they've been doing a good job. We now have the Assault class, which is the base training battle droid that we saw in the Clone Wars, same as the Commando Droid, and then we also have the Officer class from Battlefront 2 in original design, and then now we have the Commando Droid. The Commando Droid is the counterpart to the ARC Trooper in the Infiltrator class that you can play as in the game. As far as the sculpt goes here, you can see that he has an orange target, a nice pale orange there, printed on the center of the head above the two photoreceptors, and the photoreceptors are painted in white. You can see we have a dark gray that's painted at the vocoder here, and you can see just basic sculpted detail for all the machinery. This is very accurate to what we see between, you know, the Clone Wars show and then the translations to live action between Jedi Survivor and Battlefront 2 2017. Most of the sculpt on this figure is done in a very stark white, and you can see that they did paint gray for the shoulders here, just where the shoulder joints meet up. You can see bright red for this little piece right here, and then you can see that pale orange target once again in the center of the chest. As far as the back of the torso, we can see the peg hole for the vibroblade to go in, which is awesome. On the arms, we have some additional, I believe that this is actually a sculpted piece that is done in gray here on the inside of the bicep, and then you can also see that at the base of the forearm we have more gray paint, and we have some gray paint at the wrists along with the wrist hinge itself being sculpted in gray. And then you can also see that the hands are sculpted in a way that the left hand actually seems to have the trigger finger look, but you can put the blaster into the right hand no problem. The thorax of this droid, if you will, is done in gray here, and it's done in a couple separate pieces, and we'll talk about the engineering of this figure when we cover articulation a little more. Then we come down to the legs, which again are sculpted nicely, everything once again done in a very stark white. The knee hinges are painted in gray on either side, and then the hinges themselves are done in white. You can see a little bit of paint bleed on that left one there. And then at the ankles, it's kind of the same as the wrists. We have just some gray paint here, and the hinges themselves being sculpted in gray. Aside from that, that's pretty much it. It's a pretty basic look for a figure all said and done. I really like the look of the Commando Droid, and I like the look of the training droids as well. So for me, this is a win. This is great to have such a, in the grand scheme of things, such a deep cut look for this droid in the Black Series. Now, as far as articulation goes, I know I've covered covered the Commando Droid a couple times on this channel, and I have definitely expressed there's some good, some bad, and some ugly when it comes to the articulation on this guy. So as far as the neck goes, he does have a ball joint at the top there. You can see you can get some good range out of that. Technically their faces are like this when they're looking straight ahead, so he can look down a little bit with just that joint. He can look straight up as well. You can get some good tilt out of that and some good right and left. There's also a ball joint at the base of the neck that adds some additional range, and then there's a hinge at the base of the neck as well. So you can really bring this dude's head forward, you can really bring it back, you can get some additional tilt with the base of that neck, and you can get some obviously additional right and left with that as well. So overall, this is very, very impressive engineering and articulation at the neck. At the shoulders here, it's honestly equally as impressive. We have this kind of like converged ball joint system. So there's a ball joint that goes into the torso, and then that connects to a peg that has a hinge and swivel at the shoulder. So you can see you can really get a nice, rolling the shoulders motion forward and back, and with that, you can also, it emulates drop down shoulders in a way, and then that hinge, if you bring it up, you can get even more range out of that hinge to bring it up to almost 90 degrees, pretty typical for Black Series here. And then of course we have a full 360 degree swivel at the shoulders as well, and then cleverly hidden on the inside of the bicep here, there is a swivel, so you can get so much range out of those shoulders. So at the head and shoulders, we have great articulation. It's going to be the knees and toes where we have a little bit of an issue. As far as the elbows go, we have a single hinge, and the single hinge here is going to get you to about 90 degrees, and then that does hyperextend to the back about 90 degrees as well, and then it does swivel at the top of the elbow, and then we have an additional swivel at the base of the forearm, much like the B1 Battle Droid has. At the wrists, we have another hinge and swivel, so we have the swivel here, and then both wrists feature a horizontal hinge. These do get a little bit stuck, so just be careful. But once you break them free, they have some good range, about 90 degrees in and 90 degrees out. Now, as far as the torso goes, at that thorax, we have a ball joint that goes into the main chassis of the droid here, and that gets you some good circular motion. It's very, very limited, but it is good enough, especially on that swivel there, because we have additional ball joints that go throughout the thorax. So the top segment of the thorax here is a separate piece from these three pieces here, and then the one at the bottom is actually another separate piece that's connected to the abdomen of the droid. So you can see with that, we have some ball joints with even more limited range, so you can really work those to help bring him forward and back and, spiral him around a little bit. It's great to have these all work in conjunction. And then down here, we have an additional one. You can see you can get even more ball joint range out of that with some really nice forward now. You can get some really decent back, really make him arch his back, and then we can get some good tilt out of him as well, really getting the athleticism of this droid in the media he's from. Now, here's where I have a little bit of an issue with the Commando Droid. The hip joints are quite limited because the ball, as you can see, is exposed on the outside of the thigh. So the ball joints do offer some, very limited range for Commando Droids. He can only bring his legs out maybe 30 degrees, and that's, pretty lackluster in my opinion. And then, he can bring the legs forward plenty, and he can also bring them back plenty. So aside from bringing them out, we do still have decent range. And then of course you can do a thigh swivel-esque motion forward and back. It's almost non-existent, but something is better than nothing. I think personally they should have carved out a little bit more of the inside of this here, or not made it so that the ball joint goes all the way to the outside of the thigh, maybe just to give this a little bit more range. But this is such a thin and spindly character, I don't know if that's truly possible. At the knees, this is probably my biggest disappointment with this figure. We have a single hinge, there's a swivel at the top of it there, and then the single hinge does bend about a little less than 90 degrees. For a droid like this is very sad for me. It does hyperextend a little bit, as you can see as well. This is disappointing. Now, I looked at the Clone Wars, model, and this is actually straight across here. It doesn't curve to the front and the back of the knee. I think I would prefer maybe if they updated this thigh sculpt here, and they just made this bottom piece of this armor plating go straight across. It would really help this, because that's what happens with this, is it gets caught by the curvature of the bottom of the thigh on the figure. So it's pretty disappointing. And then of course the ankles, we have our forward facing pin for rocker, we have our hinge, which gets you some decent forward. Once again, these do get a little stuck, so you might have to kind of work them a little bit, but the forward is good and the back is good as well. So overall, there are a lot of things that I like about this Commando Droid that we have in the Black Series. From the waist up, it's a great figure both in sculpt and articulation, and while it's still great in the sculpt, from the waist down, it's the articulation that gets a little bit lackluster. If we work with the figure, we can still get some really good athletic poses with him. So with that, let's get these guys kitted out with their accessories. Starting off with the ARC Trooper, I'm going to just show off how the blaster pistols look with their weapon storage in the holsters. There's no right or left blaster pistol, so these will be fine in either holster here. You can see they hang in with friction, they pass the shake test, and obviously on the shelf we're going to have him with the blaster pistols in hand. In the right hand, the blaster pistol fits in very nicely, the trigger finger fits into the trigger guard, and as far as the left hand goes, it's just a little bit of a bummer. You can still fit the blaster into the hand, but you can see it's just a little bit of an odd grip because he can't actually put his finger into the trigger guard. As far as our Commando Droid goes, you can see that he does have the peg that goes into the peg hole in the back there. You can see that the vibro blade sits in there nicely, and it does pass the shake test. And then of course we have our E5. I'm going to put this into the right hand on the figure, and you can see that sits nicely. The fingers fit into that trigger guard well, and that also does pass the shake test. And here are both figures in some basic idle poses here, and you can see they look good. While they do lack a little bit of some painted detail in the case of the ARC Trooper, or some range of articulation in the case of the Commando Droid, I do think that both of these figures still have the ability to pose very well. The vibro blade does fit into the left hand very nicely as well. That does pass the shake test. Here we've got some nice one-legged mid-stride poses here. The Commando Droid going in with his melee attack, and the ARC Trooper has his rangefinder engaged. These are cool figures. Like I said, maybe not the most accurate, maybe not the best, but I still think they're fun figures to pose around. Ultimately, guys, my thoughts on this 2-pack are as follows. Are they the most accurate figures ever to their source media? No. But there have been plenty of times that Hasbro has done figures that aren't 100% accurate to the media before, and I think that it's up to us as reviewers to really point those out and share that constructive criticism so that hopefully in the future we get more accurate figures. I'm still happy that I bought this. I'm a big fan of Battlefront 2, and these guys are going to be great additions to my Battlefront display. But with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did and you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you're an ARC Trooper in my Patreon, you would have seen this review early. If you'd like access to early content, monthly giveaways, and other awesome benefits, the link to my Patreon is in the description below. Become an ARC Trooper for just $4.99 a month. If you're a fan of the reviews I do here on YouTube, or you just want to support the YouTube channel more directly, you could also check out my YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion. For just 99 cents a month, it gives you access to exclusive badges, priority replies in my comment section, you get to vote on what I review next for the channel, just like the Patreon members do, and you get to check out all my reviews early here on YouTube. If you'd like some Blitz Transmissions swag, you could always head over to the Blitz Transmissions Armory over on Printify. Link to that is in the description below, as well as links to my Discord and all my social media. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.
Breaking off. All units, fire at will. 1-2, pick your targets. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. Got